Conference?
Well, this conference is an annual event that's been held for many years, and it generally talks about current policing issues and what we might see in the future. The biggest threat at the moment in terms of our members is our members and the number of our members and what that means for the people who remain. The membership of the Police Superintendents Association of England and Wales has reduced by 12% over the last 18 months, and that's over 140 members that we've lost. And these aren't people that have decided no longer to be a member of the association. These are people whose jobs no longer exist. They've retired, moved on and not been replaced. We've anticipated from some research we've conducted that that number could be as high as 30% reduction come 2015 when the full implementation of the CSR takes place. So there's a real concern about the numbers of our members that are actually out there performing operational leadership in the police service. And the real concern is around the broader responsibilities that are being placed upon the shoulders of those members that are actually still there. So, for example, in a unit you might get a chief superintendent that retires that isn't replaced, so the superintendent steps up to do the strategic chief superintendent role, still has to perform the operational role because their job isn't replaced, and then they have to take on extra units as responsibility as well. So it's a broadening of responsibilities that one will have an issue in terms of individuals' welfare and health and well-being, and we know that we have an issue with our members not going off sick, not reporting sick. They might take leave to cover sickness, and we know this from our personal resilience survey. But we also know that they tend to ignore the symptoms of early symptoms of illness, and we've had members who've had heart attacks in the workplace just because of the sheer workload that they're under, combined with their lack of ability to look after themselves in that environment. So there's a real issue around their individual resilience and health and well-being. But then there's the operational risk that sits around that as well. If you have a superintendent who's working a very long 12-hour day and is then on call at night for a full week, gets very little sleep because they're called out most of the time but have to be back in work the next day. They have a few days off at the end of the week and then they're back on call perhaps the next week because a colleague is on leave, so they're having to cover for them. We've got members working ridiculously long hours. Now, some might say, well, that's just the nature of the role. Well, it's not the nature of the role when somebody dies as a result of a decision you've made and you have to stand at an inquest and try and explain your judgment when actually you've been incredibly tired and working very long hours. So I think there are some huge risks around, operational risks around reducing our numbers beyond that limit where people become so stretched that their judgment is called into question because of sheer tiredness. Unless police forces and ACPO and the Home Office and APA come up with a solution in the very near future, as from April next year there will be no police training at a national level. And that includes the Strategic Command Course, it includes the High Potential Development Scheme, it includes the Senior Command Training for Superintendents. There will just be no money. And you know, these are really important pieces of training that actually help people do a better job out there on the street and protecting the public. So it's absolutely critical that this issue is resolved. We understand that there might be some changes, we understand there might have to be some cuts and reductions in services, but you can't just say that there's no money and therefore it's not going to happen. That's just not acceptable. I think it's been hit quite bad, to be honest, and it's a real shame because actually the hacking scandal involves a very, very small minority of officers. There are two separate issues and they should be kept distinct. One is that there's a small number of officers who've been taking payments for, allegedly been taking payments for providing information. And the second one is the decision making of senior officers in deciding whether to continue the investigation and the decision to hire a former News of the World employee. Those decisions are judgment calls. It's not a criminal act. It doesn't mean they're corrupt officers. However, you end up with the way it's portrayed in the media, and I do think there's something around the media being able to sway the attention from themselves onto the police in this situation. So the way it's been portrayed in the media makes it far worse than I personally believe the situation is, and I have every confidence that the officers who have been selling information will be caught and will be convicted and will be sent to prison. I have no doubt at all about that. But the whole issue of the hacking scandal has been a real disappointment. Thankfully, the public confidence in police has actually risen following the summer disturbances that we saw thereafter, and I think that actually confidence has been restored to a significant degree through the actions of the brave police officers that actually stood out on the streets to protect public and property during August.